Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Lovely to see everyone. Fantastic. So great to be running another webinar with you, Jess. Honestly, just so excited. We've got lots of people joining us in. Hey, if you can have video on today, we'd love seeing everyone's faces. You will notice that you are muted, but if you can have video on, that's great. Look, if you're eating lunch or dinner, that's totally fine if you want to have it off, but we'd love being able to engage with you as well. Just before we get started and before I hand over to Jess, I would love everyone to share in the chat where you are in the world and what you do creatively. Where you are in the world and what you do creatively. If you can just pop that into the chat, that would be fantastic. See who we've got here today. Amazing. So seeing quite a few familiar names here as well. Whereabouts are you at the moment, Jess? Sharing with the group here.
I am from Los Angeles, yes, in my new design studio. As you can see, it's finally all decorated. I have my shelves up and the walls are painted, and I'm so excited.
I love it. It's looking amazing. And I know there was a big project, and honestly, it's
It
so
was,
cool to come
yeah.
together. As it always
Thank
is,
you.
these things here. I love it. Awesome. I'm actually, those of you that know, I'm from New Zealand. Those of you that don't know are going, that's where that funny accent is from. So I'm originally from New Zealand. I spent a lot of time in the US. I actually am in Argentina right now. I've been here for a couple of months. Which is fantastic. But we're actually a US-based business. A lot of our clients are in the US and Canada, a few in Europe as well, which is great too. Those of you that have just joined us, we're just popping into the chat just as we get underway, where you are in the world and what you do creatively. Lovely seeing what's popping up here in the chat already. Rhode Island, North Carolina, there we go, Minneapolis, nice. Netherlands, hey Sandra, amazing. Michigan, Washington, I love it. So many good places here. I love it. North Seattle, San Diego. It's amazing. And also just being able to see all of the variety of what people do and what people do creatively. Scotland, amazing, Christine. I love that. Germany there. Hey, Danny, amazing. Rita, Italian living in Belgium, Toronto, Texas. This is amazing. We've got people from all over the world. This is very cool. So those of you just joining us, keep firing things into the chat. But let's get things underway. I'm going to hand over to Jess so we can get started. Over to you, Jess.
Hi, everyone. Hello and welcome to Crafting Your Unique Offerings webinar. I'm Jess Miller, in case you don't know who I am. I'm a designer and illustrator. I've been working with my creative business coach, Logan Elliott, since 2022. And over the past 2 years, Logan helped me scale my creative business, doubling and even tripling my monthly income. And through his program, we crafted actionable goals, we priced my offerings with confidence, and Logan kept me accountable. And Logan has since worked with hundreds of designers and visual creatives, helping them leave their toxic day jobs and build a business of their dreams. And after this webinar, we'll be posting a link to a survey, and Logan is giving away 3 coaching calls. So definitely fill it out for a chance to win a free call. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Logan.
Amazing. Honestly, just super excited to be here. We've run a couple of webinars like this before with Jess, and just great to be here again. And honestly, today's topic is such a powerful one. We're going to be really diving into offerings. So I'm just going to give a quick intro about myself to those of you that don't know me. As I've already mentioned, I am from New Zealand. New Zealanders are affectionately called Kiwis. Kiwis, it does not come from the fruit. It's actually because of the kiwi bird. It's a flightless bird. It's the icon in New Zealand, from New Zealand. So it is quite endangered, but they are very cute little birds. So there we go. A little bit of a lesson about New Zealand today. I love it. Look, my background is that I had my own creative business for 11 years. It was in the live event space in New Zealand. And during that time, really balanced creativity and business. During that time, I also went and got my business masters. I've always been passionate about the connection of arts and creativity and business, and how do we blend those things together? How do we bridge the gaps between the two as well? And then eventually what started happening while I was running my creative business is I started doing a bunch of education and teaching work as well. So this is something that I did on the side of running my own creative business for years. I worked with universities and different business programs, creative programs, primarily in New Zealand, right up to a master's level as well, really bringing the business side of visual creative work as well. And then that kind of evolved, and then eventually I started creating my own programs, And then here we are today, full-time with the Flammable Entrepreneur brand and team, which is amazing. We help visual creatives to grow their businesses. So always good to understand what I mean by visual creatives. Well, anyone who is in the visual creative space, pretty wide space, but typically we tend to work with people who are illustrators and graphic designers and muralists. They're some of our core areas. However, we sometimes work with people outside of those areas as well. And in terms of the types of people we work with, it's people that want to grow. So that means that some people are early stage. They're like, hey, I've done a little bit of creative work. I've sold a little bit of creative work or products here and there. But I want to do this full time. I want to maybe leave a day job, or I want to, move towards running this business full time, whatever that looks like. That's kind of group one. Group two are like, well, I'm kind of doing this full time, but I need it to be more sustainable. I need to increase my revenue. I want to do more of the creative work that I love. And then occasionally we work with people who are like, I've been in business for years, but I want to transition what I'm doing. I want to be more creative in my work. Often there is more sustainability desires there as well, in terms of the income being more sustainable, but also not having to work as many hours. So all these beautiful things are what we help with over at Flammable Entrepreneur. Cool. Awesome. We are going to be getting underway very soon, but as Jess mentioned, we are doing a bit of a giveaway with some freebie coaching calls. There's going to be 3 with myself, and then a bunch more with Paul from the team. Paul's actually here as well. I know you're there today, Paul. So those of you that can see Paul on video there, he's here today for that too, and he'll be having calls with a bunch of people as well. Look, if that's something that you'd be potentially interested in, I am going to post that survey in the chat. We will send it out afterwards as well, as Jess mentioned, so it will be in the follow-up emails. But here is that form that you need to fill in. And as I said, we'll be choosing a bunch of people to get calls with myself, as well as a lot more to get calls with Paul as well. These are completely free calls. We're sharing some ideas, some tips and strategies as well. And hey, people that want to explore further how we can help you on that, cool. We can also look at what that could look like as well. So honestly, it's really a way to connect with people. And honestly, the survey itself, even if you don't end up on a call with us, we always hear from people saying it's a really powerful survey. They got a lot from it. In terms of the questions in there and the things that really dug into their dreams, their goals as well, within that too. So honestly, check it out. Click open that link now. You could do it straight after the webinar. As I said, we'll also send it out afterwards as well, but pop that link open. Okay, we're going to dig into it. So the overview today really is around crafting your unique offerings. So this is something that a lot of people get wrong, right? When they're looking at their creative skills, their creative abilities, and they want to start and grow their business, they're like, okay, how do I use those creative skills and abilities to create an offer, right? An offering. When I say offer or offering, I'm talking about products or services, right? The things that you offer, the things that you get paid for, the things that you can generate income from using your creative skills and abilities. So I've kind of a unique position because I get to work with a lot of clients, but also talk to a lot of other people, including people we don't end up working with, about what's working and what's not working in their business. And then we get to see what can then work in their business and help them to make these things work. So I come from that unique position of actually seeing the stuff and also seeing the stuff that doesn't work. Right. And it's quite fascinating. So what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be sharing a bunch of these learnings with you. And Jess is going to be reflecting on these things as well from her journey as well as we go through. Essentially, if you have the wrong strategy, right? So you're using your creative skills in the wrong way, then it doesn't actually matter how hard you work. You're still going to burn yourself out and not have the success you want. And I think that is terrible. So therefore, we want to make sure that people are not getting stuck in that. I have conversations with people all the time who we've just met for the first time. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, I'm working so hard. I've been trying for years. I've been trying to make this work, whether it's part-time or full-time. And they're like, it's not working. Maybe I'm not that good at what I do creatively. And then I look at their creative work and I'm like, you're amazing at what you do. And I look at how they're offering it, maybe how they're marketing it as well. And I can actually see from my experiences why it's not working. And I'm like, I think even if you doubled the amount of time and energy in here, I still don't think it would work. Right. So it is really important to, yes, get that strategy right. Yes, it's about things like marketing, making sure the right people know that you exist and the business stuff. But also you have to have your offerings right? The right types of services and products, utilizing your skills, your creative skills in the right ways for the people that find value, right? So we're going to dig right into this whole topic. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what's called identifying your ideal client, right? Identifying your ideal client. So occasionally we hear from people, oh, well, Logan, anyone is a possible client. I'd be happy to work with anyone that appreciates my skills, anyone that wants to work with me, sure, happy to work with them. Now, the problem with that approach is that you do also need to do the marketing side. You need to put yourself out there. You need to connect with your audience. Now, if you try and market to everyone and you even put on your website, yep, work with anyone, then anyone that does come to you, they're not going to resonate with your message. They're going to be like, oh, I don't think this is for me. It seems like it's for other people. Right. So we really need the ideal clients to actually resonate with your message. So this is really, really important, is making sure you're identifying who that ideal client is. Part of the key here is really finding out who will need and value what you do. Right. So that's the first part, is like, who's going to actually be like, wow, this is amazing. I value the thing that you do, and I do really need this. Right. So that's part of it. The second part of that is who is willing to pay money for that value. Right, this is an essential part as well, because there might be lots of people that might value what you do and be like, wow, your work's really incredible and I love what you do, but they ultimately can't pay you for it. And that's really important, because you do need to get paid for your amazing creative skills and expertise as well. You need to be able to invest in yourself and in your business to keep growing and keep helping more and more people get your creativity out there as well. So a few tips around this. One of them is that if you do have an existing business or you've worked with people in the past, it's really about looking at your favorite clients, the ones that you enjoyed working with the most, right? And multiplying them. Right? That's part of what it is. It's like, oh, well, if you've had previous clients, you've done some work before, actually look through the people you have worked with and go, okay, which ones did I really enjoy working with? Who really appreciated me? Who paid me well? Who really valued what I did? Who was easy to work with? Who was just awesome to hang out with when I had to work with them, right? So, this is something that you can do. Obviously, if you don't have a lot of past clients, or, you're an earlier stage in your business, what you can also do is get ideas from what other people are doing and have done, right? Look around in your network and get an understanding of, like, okay, on Instagram, there's a lot of information. Great. Go through and go, what types of people are there out there that I could be working with, right? This is really about getting inspired. It's not about taking other people's information. It's about looking out there and going, like, where are the opportunities? What other creatives are doing? What types of people are they working with? Right. And even going to their website, they may have some examples, some testimonials, some reviews of people they've worked with, and go through and actually start to brainstorm and go, would I like to work with restaurants? Yes, no, maybe. Right. Or what about residential? Or what about with small businesses of these types? What about confectionery brands? Whatever it is, breweries, right? You start to actually get inspired about what's possible. And part of that is the brainstorming process within this. The big brainstorming process of lots of ideas is really important. Even write down the people that you're like, no, I don't want to work with them, because that might inspire you to come up with ideas for who you could work with. One of the final tips I'll give around this is really around noting your current network that you have access to. It's always going to be easier to market within your current network at first, because you understand and they know you already, right? If you're like, oh, I'm going to market to restaurants, but I have no idea about restaurants. I don't know anyone who runs a restaurant. I've never spoken to a restaurant owner before. There's a lot more work to do. Whereas if you're like, well, my previous job or my cousin is a real estate agent, well, that's a source of information. That's part of your network, and that's a way where you can learn more, or you may already have existing knowledge. So, really thinking about, who do you have access to? What are your existing networks? What do you already know about from your life as well, right? There's a reason that often parents consider other parents as potential clients, right? They're like, oh, I'd like to work with young parents. It's like, well, that's because if you're a young parent yourself, you get it, right? You understand they also have a network as well. Right, so these are some different tips and strategies around that. Jess, would love to hear your thoughts around this, and I know it's been a big journey around these things for you as well from the last couple of years.
Yeah, of course. I think it's super important to really like envision that kind of dream client and like dream project that you'd like to create. And I remember one of the first exercises we did in your program was create a client avatar. And so just like create this fictional person, and where do they work and how much money do they make, and are they an art director and what do they do? And that just really helped kind of like envision, kind of like the kind of client I wanted to work for. And it also forced me to do the research, kind of like, is this a company that I want to, make art for? Does my style like align with this company? And then since I had like this fictional client to work towards, I really leaned into passion projects. So I think kind of like creating the kind of I just wanted to create the kind of work that I wanted to get hired for. So unlike commission work, passion projects really give you complete creative freedom, and you can explore ideas without the constraints of client expectations or deadlines, and they allow for more experimentation and innovation. And having a specific passion project in your portfolio can really attract clients who are interested in your unique perspective and skills.
I love it. And so powerful for everyone here to be able to hear this as well, because like this stuff is so essential, and it's not always easy, right? Like I think some people like, I just need to know what it's going to be or what the answer is. It's like, no, there's a process, because the answer for Jeff might be different to an answer for someone else here or someone else here or a current client we're working with or people we have worked with. Everyone's actually going to be different because everyone brings their unique background ability. So that's where doing these activities, working through these things is a big part of that as well. So what we're going to do, just before we move on to the next one, is we'd love everyone to post their Instagram link in here. Actually, go and get the Instagram URL. Jess and I are going to post it in too. Actually, Celeste here from the team here today, the Flammable team's going to post our link in there too. And some of you may hear from Celeste or may have already had some DMs with Celeste in the Instagram chat too, which is great. So we posted our Flammable one there. Let's make sure everyone's following each other as well as Jess and I. We would love to connect with you more all as well. But this is a great opportunity for community and connection with other amazing creatives and to get inspired. So pop in your links like everyone's doing here, and also go through and follow everyone else, right? So really important part of it. This is also nice to have a few more followers of awesome, supportive, creative people in your network as well. Amazing. I see everyone is piling into the chat there as well, popping lots of links in there. So just keep firing that in. All good stuff. Amazing. Okay. Next thing that we're going to do and talk about is really around this idea of diversification of revenue streams. What does that mean? It just means really doing more offerings wise, right? So diversifying what you offer rather than saying, hey, I do this, right? I am a muralist, right? You can do that, but diversification says, okay, you're a muralist, but you also do some editorial illustration as well, right? So it's really about diversifying what you offer. And this is a really important thing that you do need to do. However, what I tend to see is that most creative people do not struggle with coming up with ideas. They struggle to narrow things down, right? Not the same with everyone, but most people are like, well, I could do so many different things. Right? They're like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and this, right? You're all creative people, right? And that's part of the beauty here of the creative mind, is that there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of inspiration, there's a lot of possibilities. That can also be challenging, right? And we know that focus is also power, and it's about trying to, yes, focus that creative energy. At the same time, there's some wisdom out there that we sometimes see online of like, oh, you should just focus on like one thing, one offering at a time. I don't believe that for creative people, right? I don't think it works. You could try it, you will get very bored of it, right? So actually what we've really seen through the work over many years is that having 3 to 5 different offerings is a really good number to aim for. Now, depends on how you define offering, for sure. There's some different elements within that. But what we often see is that people are trying to do like 8 different things at the same time. You can actually do everything, you just can't do everything right away, right? So especially when you're in growth mode, focus is going to be really important. Now, if you have a day job or family you're caring for or some illness challenges yourself, then you probably don't want to focus on 5 different types of offerings, products, services. That probably is a bit too much, right? But you might be able to focus on 2 or 3, right? Not 1, because you're going to get bored. 2 could be okay, but 3 tends to be kind of the sweet spot within that. Once again, I'm not saying that you can't do things longer term or do more things longer term, but we really need to build stability into the business. Now, one of the things that I talk about quite a bit is really this idea of having focus on what we call valuable offerings. Valuable offerings are things that are $300 plus, right? So they could be products or services. They tend to be more service-based. But what we've really seen over many, many years is that having a focus on these higher value offerings is what will get you to the higher income, the stability as well. Now, I say focus. I'm not saying you can't do anything that's under $300. We've got lots of clients, including Jess, who have offerings for under that, right? What we're really saying is that to get to a point of stability and good revenue, stable revenue, long-term sustainable income, we really see there needs to be a big focus on the $300 plus offerings. So that could be 60% of your energy could be on those offerings. It could be more, it could be less, but it's more of a majority. Right, we have people that do everything that you can imagine within their creative business, but really having their core thing, their core focus, what we call the bread and butter, is something that's $300 plus, is what we see gets them to those goals much faster and builds a more long-term sustainable business as well. So part of this here is it's not always easy to hear that, right? I'm sure there's some people here that are like, oh, what are you talking about, Logan? This is new. And we often have conversations with people, both myself and Paul, we have conversations with people all the time that we have these first conversations and people are like, part of it is figuring out the question. Right? The question is, what could I do that's $300 plus? Right? We work with people all the time that don't know the answer, but we help them to figure out that answer. Right, so that's part of it as well. It's often an openness to figuring this out, but this is just from talking to so many people and working with so many more, is that I've seen again and again and again, Paul sees it all the time as well, people that are like, I don't have anything that's over $300 and I'm struggling to make this whole business work. And we're like, that's kind of one of the reasons why, right? That's one of the reasons why. Of course, longer term, anything is possible. You can lean more into those scalable or passive income areas longer term, even more. You can do them at the start as well, but it just tends to be better to have a lower focus as well. So I know you have a ton of perspectives, and we talk about this a lot as well, Jess, but we'd love to hear your thoughts around this and your perspectives for everyone as well.
Yes, I do. And I feel like we cover this topic, I think, on every one of our webinars because it's just so important. And before I started working with Logan, I solely relied on commission work. And if you're a freelancer of any sort, you know that it can be tough because some months you have a lot of projects come in and then some months you don't. So it's like a feast or famine. So working with Logan, he really helped me set goals and to kind of explore different income streams. So now my income streams include art licensing, education, and social media partnerships. And that was just kind of finding kind of like my strengths as well as like exploring new things. Like education was pretty new at the time. And Logan was really like helped me like push through that Skillshare class and get that published and stick to it so that he held me accountable so that I could complete it. And then also lean into like what you're good at, like your strengths. And so social media and like content creation, it was just something I was like naturally adept to. And then I fell into it. And that now is like a major income stream. So and the beauty of like art licensing and education is that it's scalable income. So it's a lot of work that you have to do upfront and like writing a course and filming or like drawing a complete collection, of surface pattern designs. But once you have it done, you can just sell it and then collect royalties over time. So I tend to lean into more art licensing and education in the springtime when my client commissions are lower. So it just helps kind of like offset those months when the freelance is lighter.
Amazing. I love it. Cool. We're going to take everyone into the next point within this training around offerings, which is around building an online presence around what you do, right? So this is an important part of it. I think everyone knows that these days is part of what you need to do is you need to get yourself out there. One of the ways you get yourself out there is through having an online presence around your business. It's kind of just another way of saying marketing yourself. I think we all go, oh, marketing. A lot of people go, oh, I don't know about that word marketing, but it's just really sharing. It's really about sharing what you do. Right? That's what it comes down to. So building an online presence is exactly that. So part of it is to make sure that your online presence basically shows people what you can do. Right? So one of the mistakes that I see people making all the time is that they're not really that clear on what they are offering to who. right? You go to their website, you go to their Instagram, and it's kind of like, oh, wow, they're amazing at what they do creatively. I can see that. But like, is this person a student? Is this a hobby? Like, go to their website and there's lots of examples of their work, but you don't have clarity around like exactly what they are offering, right? Are they available for hire? So this is something to be really mindful of, is make it really clear that you're available for hire, the sorts of things that you do and the sorts of things that you do for home. And part of it is then also putting up examples of the work that you want to attract. Right. And Jess has already talked about this around mock-ups, right? Or create personal projects, right? Having personal projects to display the sort of work that you want to do more of. And you can put that work up online, on your website, on your Instagram, on other forms of social media, to put it out there and say, hey, here's examples of what I can do. Because something that I remind clients about this all the time is like, your clients are generally not the creative ones, right? You are the creative one. You need to show them what's possible. And part of that is going to be through showing them what's possible through previous work that you've done, right? So examples up on your website, examples on your Instagram of how can your creative skills be utilized, right? Is it on product? Is it a service? Is it that you worked with someone? What does that look like? Or, as I said, could it be mock-ups? Could it be examples of how you could use your creative skills or those personal projects? Or it might just be past client work, right? This is something that, yes, if you've got past clients, you've probably got past client work. And if you've got permission from them to share it, great, amazing. You can actually share it. And here's an example. It also builds credibility as well. So this is something that I will talk about around building an online presence as well, is that showing up as you is really, really important, right? People want to work with people. People also trust people. So if you don't show up, if you go to your Instagram page, your website, and you can't see a person, it's just like there's this company, well, it's harder to build trust. You're like, I don't know, are they going to steal my money? Are they going to take my money? Is this going to work out? Whereas actually, building trust is an essential part of business, and that's where showing up as you, right? Ideally, when I say that, it means your face. Now, everyone feels, pretty much everyone's like, oh, that's kind of scary, but at least having you on your about page, maybe in your website in different places as well. And then maybe occasionally on social media as well. Doesn't need to be that you're on every single video and post, right? In our brand, well, yes, I'm on every single video and post. That's because it's a coaching, very different. But for you, yes, the majority is going to be your creative skills and abilities, right? Your creative work. But also part of that creative work is the creator behind it, which is you, right? So you showing up is important because it's a lot easier to trust a person, a real person, than just a brand name, right? Just a company name, right? So trust is really important in this as well. And building trust through showing up online and actually, yes, ideally having a LinkedIn page, even if you're not using LinkedIn as a platform, having a page, having some connections on there, having an Instagram, having some different forms of a website, right? These things all build credibility. Look, we've had clients who have actually managed to get clients without having a website before the earlier stage. Of course, it's all possible, it's all doable. But once you have a website, it's going to build more credibility as well. People are going to be more likely to say yes to working with you as well. So powerful. Jess, what are your thoughts around this in terms of your journey and different things you can share on that?
I know. I feel like Logan kind of like took the words out of my mouth, but yeah, basically like we live in such a digital age, so it's like super important for us to have like a strong online presence and to just show up. Because I think a lot of us get like frustrated with the algorithm or we don't get as many like likes or whatever, but it's like you should just post to like share your work as well as like share yourself, like just show like a little bit of behind the scenes and your process, because I feel like that really is a storytelling, and it kind of builds trust, like Logan was saying, and it just tells like the client more of who you are and what you can offer when you can actually show like the behind the scenes of what you do. And like, you know, maybe it's a studio tour, it's like an about you link, and or about you on your website. And definitely like I lean into social media. Like Instagram is my primary portfolio. It's where the majority of my clients find me. But then like once they click through, I have links that will lead them to my personal website, and then they can see, you know, examples of projects that I've worked on in the past. And it's just it's just a little more professional, and I also keep it up to date. So I think that's really important, because I've seen artists that have websites, but they're like really out of date. They've obviously, they haven't updated it with current projects or like current offerings. So I think it's important to have both and to kind of update them regularly. And just one more point, like showing up on social media also is a great way to lean into the community so that we're kind of like all in this together, and you can meet other artists and kind of build a creative network.
I love it. So, so powerful. And yeah, that creative community, that creative network is just, yeah, such an important, such a powerful part of it as well. I love it. Okay, we're going to talk about niching down. Niching down. It's a kind of a funny word actually. Something that I pick up on occasionally, and lots of other people pick up on, is that I say some words differently because I'm from New Zealand. So we tend to have, sometimes a bit more of a UK related thing. So whenever you hear a word where you're like, "What did he just say?" Probably the Kiwi accents, and my apologies. So we're going to talk about niching down. So niching down your unique services or products. Right. So this is really about narrowing down. That's kind of the way to think about it. And it's kind of related to what I talked about earlier, which is around when you come to something like target market. If you're trying to offer to everyone, you end up offering to no one. It's kind of the same when it comes to your products and services as well. If you try and be too general, then you're going to end up more as a generalist rather than a specialist, right? So, for example, let's give the example around murals, right? If you're a muralist, right? Well, often you want to specialize in different types of murals. Murals are it's a whole wide range. There's so much you can do within that. But actually, niching down even further is often into, okay, well, what types of murals do you do? Do you do more residential murals? Do you do commercial? Are you doing small things? Are you even doing things for small businesses where you do mini murals, or are you doing live painting murals, right? There's honestly, even within any industry, there's just so many opportunities. So it is important, especially as you get further along your business and you grow, you want to niche down further. It's kind of also terrifying. Often what we recommend is, yes, you kind of keep things a little bit wider at the start. You could promote yourself as more of a muralist and give different examples of the work that you do. But you need to be aware that over time, you're probably going to want to specialize. Part of specialization is also about getting really, really good at a certain thing as well, right? Really good at this specific thing. My recommendation is to have several areas that you niche in, right? So, like we talked about, not just one offering, one thing that you do. No, you want to have several things that you do, but each of them is quite specific, right? So rather than saying, well, I do visual creative stuff for anyone, that's my offering, is like, well, that's not really an offering. It's a big series of offerings. You want to get more specific. Okay, I do illustration. Okay, well, illustration is great too, but like, what types of illustration? Or graphic design, what types of graphic design? So often really focusing down even further is a really important thing to do. Part of it is also, as we said already, showing what you can do, right? So showing what's possible, because even, and this happens all the time, it's like people are like, well, like, I'm a creative person, I can do anything, just tell me what you want, right? They say that to a client. It's like, what do you need? What do you want? The clients are not the creative person. They're like, I don't know, what can you offer? And you're like, well, I can offer anything. What do you want? Right? And they're like, I don't know what I want, right? They're not the creative person. It's a bit like walking into a restaurant and saying, where's the menu? And they say, oh, we can cook you anything. And you're like, okay, what are the options? Like, they're like, anything. You're like, I don't know. I don't know what I want, right? Anything. There's too much choice, right? So we walk into a restaurant expecting, hey, we want to look at a menu. We want to be able to pick and choose. It's the same with clients, right? You're not you walk into a restaurant, you're not the chef. You don't understand the different options available, right? You're not the specialist and thinking, well, actually, I'd really like this thing here, and this could be interesting to have a fish curry. Well, actually, them coming to you with those options and how they can do and what they do best, because you might be like, well, yeah, I could have a fish curry, but you're only good at making fish curry. They're like, yeah, I can do it. You're like, yeah, but can you do it well? Right. So that's kind of a fun and interesting analogy to think about when it comes to niching down and really understanding that it is important to get more specific. And over time, you'll be able to niche down further. But yes, make sure you've got that diversification. Make sure you're actually exploring several niches as well. Jess, would love to hear your thoughts around this as well, in terms of the journey you've had around niching down as well.
Yeah, I forget that saying, if it's like master of everything is like master of none, but basically what Logan's saying, if you're like too general, then I think you're kind of like spreading yourself too thin and you don't really have a specialty. So it's important to kind of figure out like what that specialty is and to kind of niche down into that service. And for me, like generally speaking, I'm an illustrator, but I specialize in drawing character portraits, creating surface patterns, and hand lettering. So it's very specific. And then I put that in my Instagram bio as keywords so that, you know, if an art director is typing in hand lettering, like they can immediately like find that. And also to figure out kind of like what you don't want to do. And so I kind of figured out like early on, like I got a lot of requests for children's books illustration, and I'm like, I just figured out that like it just wasn't really something that I specialized in. And so I actually had to like turn down those projects in order to pursue things that I was more interested in. You know, I'm better at illustrating greeting cards than I am at like a full scale like children's book. So definitely I think just like leaning into your strengths and just finding out like what sparks joy, and then that will help you kind of be able to like niche down in your particular service.
I love it. I think, you know, just what you've said there, Jess, around like the saying no part. I think, you know, and there's different parts of business, right? There's going to be times where the key is saying yes as much as possible. But you're going to all reach times where it's like, actually, it's also about saying no. Right. And I know for you, Jess, as you've grown in your career and in the business grow, it almost more becomes about what are the opportunities to say no to, almost becomes a bigger thing than what to say yes to. Because there is, as you grow, as you've grown, there's been more opportunities as well. And this is something that everyone needs to be aware of is, hey, there's going to be times where there's lots of yeses and you're going to try and you're going to experiment, you're going to do lots of different things. But then there's going to be times where you're like, hey, I do need to focus and I need to actually try this specific area out as well. So I love that. Hey, we've got one more thing that we're going to be talking about and sharing on this training, but then we're going to jump into Q&A. So if you have a question that you would love to ask, can you please post it in the chat? So just post the question itself straight into the chat, and we'll see if we can dive into them as well. We were sent in a couple of things beforehand as well, so we'll try and cover them as well. Let's dive into our final thing. So one thing we're going to talk about here is adapting to market trends and opportunities. Right. So it's really about adapting to what is going on in industries, what is going on in the world, what is going on within the opportunities out there. So, you know, the first thing we need to be very aware of is that things change over time, and that is life, and that's okay, and that's normal. It can be a bit frustrating, but we need to be aware whatever is working right now isn't probably just going to work forever. It may or may not work in a year's time. It may or may not work in the future. And we need to really keep tabs on those things. So, you know, we sometimes see people who have kind of done the same thing for years, right? They've had the same creative offering, same clientele for years, right? And it reaches a point where it kind of just stops working. And they're like, oh my God, I don't know what happened. And we're like, well, you kind of just, you were in a stagnant place. You're doing the same thing again and again. And yes, you were happy while that was happening, but the risk was it may not keep happening forever. So this is where things like the diversification we've already talked about is really, really important. We've seen over the years that things change, right? Opportunities change. We saw a lot change because of COVID, right? COVID, things changed literally overnight. Now, obviously, a lot of things don't tend to change overnight, but they can. Opportunities change. There were new opportunities. There's also opportunities from the past that changed and were no longer opportunities. So one of the things that I've really seen is that print on demand has just become more and more competitive and harder to make work. Now, that's because so much more people are doing it. So we're seeing that it's much harder to build a business off something like print on demand. We have some clients that do a little bit of it, but we're like, minimize it, right? Minimize the amount of energy you're putting into it. It also doesn't fall into that $300 plus area, right? It's a numbers game. It's like you need to sell so much to make it work. But the conversation that I often have with people is like, yeah, I've been trying print on demand for 2 years and I make like $20 a month, if that. Right. So if that's you, it's a common thing that we're hearing again and again. And I don't think it's that you're no good at what you do creatively. It's that this is a very, very competitive thing and the opportunities have shifted and changed, right? In the last 5 years. If we were talking even 3 years ago, I'd probably be saying something different as well, right? So this is something that we just need to be very, very aware of, is that things will change, trends will change. And part of it is keeping an eye on that. And that's where you showing up, you keeping on learning is really, really important. Part of it is you need to keep testing stuff, right? And to be honest, there is a saying in business, which is like, if you're not growing, you're dying. I'm not a huge fan of that saying, to be honest, but there is some truth to it. because it kind of says like you do need to keep your eye on the ball. You need to keep testing things. You need to keep experimenting. If you just do the same thing and say, oh, I've figured it all out, and this is what I do. This is how I market my business. This is how I get clients. It's just repeat clients. It's referrals. And I'm just doing this long term. It's like, yeah, that may work for months or maybe even a year or years. But at some point, you're probably going to find things are changing. You can't increase your prices. You're finding the opportunities in a specific area are changing. So that's where if you do just let your business kind of do its thing, you just got to be aware that things may stop at some point. So this is why fresh opportunities are important, new opportunities. It's also why marketing is important as well, to bring in new clients and new people you're working with as well. So, there's a lot around this topic. Obviously, we can only cover so much today, but just remembering there that adapting to market trends and opportunities is going to be part of it. And it's not just about adapting to the opportunities, it's about the way that you pursue those opportunities, right? Marketing. We haven't talked about marketing on the webinar today, but this is a huge area within this as well. Approaches in marketing changing. If I could tell you how many times people have told me the Instagram algorithm has just changed, Logan, I'm like, yeah, it's been changing since they launched that platform, right? It's always going to change. And it's the same with every other social media platform as well. Things will keep evolving and changing. Yes, some of those changes are really frustrating for sure, but we need to keep adapting, keep learning around this as well. We've got a few things popping up into the chat, which is fantastic. So we'll jump into them. But first, Jess, do you have anything you wanted to share kind of around the stuff around adapting, market trends, opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself a commercial artist, so it's super important for me just to be aware of marketplace trends. And I try not to get like too wrapped up in them, but just to be aware and think of ways that I can just naturally incorporate them into my art and workflow. And so how I can stay relevant. And I mean, just taking like AI, for example, like I was super resistant, like when, all this like AI stuff started coming out. But then, I also realized like it's not going anywhere. And then I thought, how can I actually incorporate this into my workflow instead of just being so resistant? And so I use like Adobe Firefly just to like as a brainstorming tool, just to kind of take away that like blank page syndrome. Like I'll feed it like a text to image prompt just to see what it comes up with. And then it helps me kind of like springboard ideas. And so I can start sketching. And I think it's just super important to lean into that as a tool. And so it's not like taking away from your art. It's just, it's like a personal assistant. It's helping you. So that's just one of like many examples of like marketplace trends.
Amazing. I love it, Jess. So powerful and great to, get Jess's thoughts and expertise around this as well. We're going to be jumping into the Q&A. So honestly, there's already a bunch of good questions in here as well. I think you've got one that was sent in beforehand as well, Jess. Is that right? So we've got one that was sent in before as well.
Yes,
I've got
I'm
someone
happy
too.
to
Yeah. Do you want to start off? Yep.
Sure. So this person asks, how can you trust a client if you send the work, but you haven't been paid yet? So I think this is super important to set a contract beforehand and set your terms. So if the client doesn't send you a contract to sign, I think it's really important that you supply your own. And then you put in your terms. So you write like, I'm going to provide, a round of sketches and then color and then final. So it's 3 rounds. And then anything other than that is like an extra fee. And then also put in your payment terms. So I want to get paid in net 30 days or net 60 days, just so you can then have both sign off on that and both are in agreement. And so that, when the client isn't paid, you can remind them and say, remember this contract we signed and like you agreed to pay on, this X date. And also another way to kind of establish payment, particularly if it's a large project, is to ask for half of the payment up front so you can secure that, and then upon completion you get paid the remainder. And I think that is another really great way to kind of like establish that trust in payment.
Amazing. It's such an important subject, is just getting paid for the work that you do. It's so important. So love that. Okay, so just looking through the other questions you've got that we've got here. Really good question around the examples of $300 plus offerings for illustrators, right? So from Jen there, that's honestly, this is such a good question. And I know it's something that comes up often. It's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially people who are in the illustration space. They're going, okay, well, that's an interesting idea, Logan. I kind of get it. And I get the numbers behind it and how that works, but like, freak out. What can I do? Okay, so the good answer is, well, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot of opportunities. Part of it is understanding what you're excited about and really leaning into that. But I'm going to just share some of the types of things that we do tend to see illustrators getting into that are typically those higher price offerings. First thing I will say is that generally they're more service based, right? So yes, there's sometimes products and things you can do that are $300 plus, but generally they're more service-based. They're generally more working with clients. Yes, can be private individual clients. Often it tends to be more businesses, organizations as well, right? There will always be lots of examples here outside of this, but some of the things that we do tend to see for illustrators is illustrative branding, right? So this is less like your typical kind of more graphic design type branding. It's more using your illustrative skills around more branding type work. Editorial design, right? So editorial is another whole area in itself. We see people getting into lots of different areas, whether that's within magazines, whether it's books, right? Getting into book covers or book illustrations. There's a big whole area there. We've seen people almost focus their whole business around different areas of editorial design. Packaging is another quite big area as well. This is something that we often think about. It's like, what do you mean by packaging, Logan? It's like, there's packaging all around us right now. I'm sure that pretty much everyone here could probably look around the room they're in right now and go, there's packaging, and that packaging has designs on it that someone has designed, and some of them would contain illustrations. Right. So yes, things like food is a pretty obvious one, but also you can get into other areas of packaging. Could be cosmetic, could be product packaging. There's kind of an endless group of stuff that you can do around packaging. And once again, it's about understanding what types of packaging you'd be excited about. We've got clients who've got into things like breweries, right? So even designing branding for labels for bottles, right? So the packaging, right? There's so many different areas of opportunity within this as well. And then you get into areas of bottle illustration. Right, so spot illustrations itself, social media, there's a whole round of opportunities you can do for social media, right? Or websites or other advertising areas as well. I've already mentioned this, but murals, like actually as an illustrator, like being able to transfer those creative skills and abilities into murals is a really powerful way that you can actually charge a lot. So you can take your creative skills, your ability to create an amazing design, and you can basically scale them up to a much bigger design, and you can charge a lot for them. Right, we've had clients that have charged $10,000 or even $20,000 for murals. Right, these things are all possible. Of course, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of energy. You've often got to upskill and figure these things out, but there is a growing opportunity, especially around things like murals. Another area I'll just briefly mention is event illustration as well. Event illustration, so could be illustration for weddings or for corporate events or for parties. There's lots of different areas within that as well. So love it. I think maybe for this question around passion projects, Jess, do you want to dive into that one from Jules? Hope you're well, Jules. Nice to see you here. Do you want to dive into that one?
Hi,
Examples
Jules.
around passion
Hi.
projects?
Yeah, sure. Especially when I was first starting out, like I just didn't have like a lot of work to show on my website, but that I wanted to get hired for. And so like a good example of a passion project, I got a really nice mock-up of coffee packaging, and I put some really fun like tiger illustration on it. And I grabbed the Starbucks logo and I put it on there. And I even said, like, this is an exploratory design I did for, Starbucks. It's fictional. This is just like what could possibly I could do for them. And I, put a little type on there, like Sumatra flavor. And I can't tell you how many clients said, like, oh my God, we love your Starbucks packaging. Like, can you do something like that for us? So it's just like a great like conversation starter. And it's almost like the client has to like see an example of it for them to like get like, oh yeah, she can do that. Like she can do that for me, in my brand. So that's just like one example of like a passion project that you could do.
I love it. So good. It's it's a really great way to get your skills, but also get examples of your work out there. And being like, once again, these types of clients that then came to you, like you've inspired them for what's possible. You're like, I could do it the whole time, right? I could do it the whole
Yeah.
time. Like, have you seen all my other creative work and abilities I've done? But they're like, oh, that really inspired them as well. So I love that. So Jillian's got a great question here, which is really around, I have no idea who would buy my artwork and I don't know how to find out. It's honestly, it's one of the biggest challenges that people have. So where I would really start with that, Jillian, is getting really clear on the whom and the what, right? Because obviously I don't have full context of the question, but if it's around artwork, it's like, great, like what are the specific types of offerings that you could offer? Are they things that other people have offered? Because if other people have offered these things, then probably there's a market there for it. And then who would you like to do that to? Now, that's great. You've got a who, and then you've got a what, right? Now, that's all very well, but the next step is we've got to get it out there and we've got to test this stuff. So it really does come down to that marketing stuff, because the only way you're ever going to know if people will buy a thing and if people want the thing is literally by putting yourself out there, sending emails, posting on Instagram, trying to connect with people, do the networking thing. That ultimately is going to what it's come down to. And there's going to be some figuring out as you go, and you could get things wrong and you could fail at things and all of those things there. But ultimately, that's going to be part of it, is trying, right? There's, at a point, you've got to put a stake in the ground and say, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this thing here, and I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to create some examples of the work, maybe through some passion projects like Jess has shared. But ultimately, that's going to be part of it. Is yes, we do the exercise around like who potentially can it be. We get inspired by what other people are doing, what other creatives are doing with their creative skills. But ultimately, you're gonna have to put yourself out there, and that's terrifying when you're like, I'm still figuring stuff out. I'm still figuring out what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. That's okay. Ultimately, you're also going to figure things out as you go, and often you're going to do that from a live thing. Yes, you can do surveys, you can go talk to people, you can go to that target market and find someone you know, or literally knock on doors or send out surveys. You can do that, and that's going to give you some really good ideas and inspiration. But in the end, until someone spends money with you, you actually don't know if it's going to work. The biggest problem that we tend to see around business is the marketing stuff, right? Not enough of the right people. So we tend to see that people generally, sometimes they need some support around the types of offerings and the target markets and those things there, right? For sure, that's a pretty common thing. But then they're like, oh, well, it doesn't work. I've tried that before. I've tried selling to these sorts of people. I've tried marketing to them. And we're like, great, what have you done? And they're like, I posted on Instagram. And they're like, what else? And they're like, I posted on Instagram. And you're like, well, you don't post that much, right? And I get it. Instagram can be pretty overwhelming. But we need to understand that that's what's going to get you out there, is doing that marketing stuff. Rebranding it, sharing. I feel like I need to start a petition around rebranding that word, but it really is what it is. It's sharing. It's sharing what you do with a wider audience. And we could kind of go down any specific realm and talk about cold email. Cold email, everyone, it still works. I know it does not sound very exciting. It still works. It is something that you can definitely do. Jess does it as well. We have clients that do it, and it's successful. However, the biggest reason it does not work is that people don't do it. Right? Or if they are doing it, they just don't do enough of it. So this is where, when it comes to marketing, whether it's cold email or on Instagram, partnerships, networking, these different areas, often it's more around having a plan of attack and then consistently doing it, right? And consistently trying to move things forward. We've even had clients we've occasionally worked with that are like, okay, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to really take my creative skills and abilities, and I'm going to focus it, and I'm going to decide on these offerings and these target markets. And then they're going to put themselves out there. And then we work with them, and after a couple of months, they go, right, I've decided this is not the thing, right? Like, I don't want to do this thing. I don't want to work with these sorts of people. And sometimes there's a feeling of like, what a waste of time. I got it completely wrong. And we're like, no, you've just learned so much about now how to do it with the next time. And they're like, oh, maybe. And then the next thing, when they decide what their offering they're going to try is, or their target markets, they just do it so much faster, because they're taking all the learnings, the process, the approach as well. So love it. So you've all got a bit of a Logan rant about this stuff, but I think it's just so important. Do you have anything else you want to add around that, Jess, in terms of, the opportunities out there around these things, but also just trying and testing and giving it a go?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just showing up, and just showing up consistently, whether you get a bite or not. And like Logan was saying, I definitely do cold outreach, and it's hard. I will tell you, it's hard, because sometimes you feel like you're like screaming into a void, and you're like, I'm never going to get a response. But at the same token, like you're not going to like move a step forward if you don't take that first step. So it's like it is like necessary, like you do have to like just put yourself out there and just understand that like rejection and no response is probably going to be part of it, but it only takes one bite. It only takes one client to be like, oh yeah, sure, I have a project in mind, to kind of like turn your perspective. And so you won't get that first bite unless you like put yourself out there.
I love that. It's going to be part of it. And part of this here is doing the stuff that can be a bit scary as well, right? A lot of fear can come up around putting ourselves out there. There's a lot of very natural, normal things that are happening in our bodies when we try and do these things. Like, hey, don't do that. It's dangerous, right? Well, no, actually, it's safe, but the feeling is not always safe. So we've just got to be aware of those feelings that can come up as well. We are going to jump into this final question there around Instagram accounts. Just before we do dive into that and start to wrap up, I am going to post that link in again. Love to connect with a bunch of you. Fill in that survey. See if we can get you on a call with myself or Paul. So do fill that in, and we'll obviously pick as many as we can for that. But as I said, even just filling it in, we also will share that we do give away anyone that fills in the form. We'll basically be contacting you, giving you some free advice based on a question there as well. So even if you don't end up on a call, which we're going to get hopefully quite a few calls to people, but even if you don't, we'll make sure we get you some good feedback there either way. Okay, so this is kind of one of my favorite topics here. This question around, should I put things on the same Instagram account or different Instagram accounts? So the question really being, hey, I have a bunch of samples for children's book illustration, but I want to expand my works for licensing illustration, art prints, wall art, tea towels, and greeting cards. And illustration styles for children's books and licensing are so different. Should I put them on the same Instagram account? Right. Look, there's definitely different views on this. And my views are that one account. Now, there's a reason for that. The biggest reason is that what tends to happen if you have two accounts is that you will dilute yourself across both. It's already enough to keep up with one Instagram account. And I'm talking about for your business, right? It's already enough to keep posting on one. That takes time, that takes energy, right? Jess and I both know. However, if you now try and do two, even if it kind of makes sense around the strategy, because you're like, well, there's different styles, different approaches, the problem will be that you'll dilute yourself between the two. You'll post basically probably half as much as you could if it was one account. And unfortunately, the Instagram algorithm does not like it, right? The Instagram algorithm would prefer you to post a bit more consistently than that. Okay, so what ends up happening is even less that people see on both rather than combining it. Now, at the same time, it can be a bit hard combining different styles and these different things. I definitely get that. The thing to think about is that, like, with your children's book illustration clients, like, would they be offended or really confused if you started posting some other things on that's maybe less related or a slightly different style? Generally, they're probably not going to be upset or offended, right? And generally, it's still in the visual creative field. So you're not suddenly saying, I'm now selling motorbikes, right? And I'm promoting motorbikes and my children's book illustration. Don't know where that example came from, but it's not like they're completely different things. It's like you're still a visual creative with visual creative offerings, right? So you might be posting a bit of both, but it's probably not going to, someone who's maybe going to work with you on children's book illustration, if they see a greeting card design, they're probably not going to be like, unfollow, who's this person? They're going to be like, oh, that's cool, they do that too, right? So even if they do feel very different to you, often it's still you with your creative skills and abilities under your own name, your own brand, and those things there as well. So it is, it's something that there's lots of different ways to do this stuff, but that's my recommendation around that. Is it's more about how do you work smarter rather than just trying to do more work, because it's going to be challenging to keep one account going as it is. Look, longer term, you build a team, you get helpers maybe, but even then, well, it might be harder to manage multiple accounts as well. I love it. Look, our time has ticked along as it always does. Honestly, it's just been so good connecting with everyone. I would love everyone here to post in the chat one takeaway from today. What's something that you've found useful, powerful, interesting, helpful? Maybe something that you've learned or something that you've found fascinating. It could even be something that you're like, oh, that was a surprise. I didn't see that coming. What's some piece of information? So if everyone can share that, it's to help really consolidate things for everyone here. And really also, we always love hearing what people are thinking about and what people are taking from it as well. So I know people are writing into the chat there as well. Yeah, Narissa, that first one there, reframing marketing as sharing. I think it's so important. The marketing is like this scary businessy term, like marketing and sales. Ugh, right? We kind of go, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I want to just create. That's what I'm here for. Like, yes, Like we need to get that creativity out there as well, and that's going to be the sharing stuff. So reframing that. Narissa, we can work on maybe a petition to see if we can somehow rebrand it in the dictionary. I don't know what that would look like. Amazing, Amanda. Love the idea of doing passion projects focused on the kind of client you want to attract as well. Doing mock-ups of what type work that you want. Restaurant menu analogy is a good one, Paul, for sure. I know the only one who's trouble with, I'm not the only one that has trouble with narrowing things down, Catherine. Learning to niche down on specific offerings, putting yourself out there, passion projects as well. I love it. So good. And just honestly amazing seeing all the different things being shared in the chat here as well. I'm encouraged that Jess also didn't have portfolio work that she wanted when she started. Same boat there, Abby. So, these stuff are being able to relate to other people here is just such an important part of this journey. So honestly, Jess, it's been amazing doing this together. We're going to wrap things up. It's been a blast, hasn't it, today? We've had a great amount of questions too.
Yeah, I've had a blast. It's been so much fun.
Awesome. We're going to wrap things up there, everyone. Do take care. Have a lovely day, and we'll keep an eye out for filling in those surveys, and hopefully we can get on some calls as well. Hey, take care, everyone. Ciao.
Bye.